It was a cold evening. The sky was gray, and light rain touched the dusty streets. A teenage boy walked slowly, hands deep in his jacket pockets. His shoes were worn out, and his jeans had patches. He didn't have much, but he never complained. After school, he worked at a gas station, pumping fuel and wiping windows. Every rupee he earned went straight to his mother, who worked 2 jobs just to pay rent and buy food. That night, he hadn't eaten. He skipped lunch to save money and didn't want to worry his mom, who hadn't eaten well herself. As he passed by a small diner, the warm lights inside looked so comforting. The smell of food reached his nose, and his stomach growled. He stepped inside not to eat, but just to sit, maybe drink water, and feel warm for a little while. The waitress didn't mind. She had seen him before. He sat quietly at a corner table and stared out the foggy window. Then he noticed them. An old couple had walked in, both dressed in simple, clean clothes. The man looked tired, and the woman held his hand gently. They sat down across the room. He could hear their soft voices asking for the cheapest item on the menu. The man looked through his wallet, then opened a coin pouch. The woman looked worried. Her eyes moved across the restaurant nervously. The boy watched silently. He knew that feeling, the fear of not having enough. He had seen his mother cry in the kitchen when they didn't have money for electricity. He had skipped meals so his younger sister could eat. He understood it deeply. The couple tried to cancel one item, whispering to the waitress that they didn't have enough for both. But the waitress hesitated, looked back at the kitchen, and nodded. The boy stood up quietly. He walked to the counter and pulled out the only money he had left, just enough to cover one basic meal. He handed it to the waitress and pointed at the old couple. "Please," he whispered, "put it on my bill. Just don't tell them." The waitress looked at him. She knew he couldn't afford it. She opened her mouth to say something, but he gave a soft smile. "It's okay. They need it more." Then he walked out into the rain. He didn't even wait for a glass of water. He walked slowly toward home, stomach still empty, shoes wet from the puddles, but his heart felt light. He didn't know who the couple was. He didn't need to know. It just felt right. Back inside the diner, the couple finished their food. When they asked for the bill, the waitress told them it had already been paid. The woman's eyes filled with tears. The man looked around, searching for the person who had done it. But the corner table was empty. "Who was he?" the man asked softly. The waitress shrugged. "Just a boy, quiet kind." The couple sat in silence for a moment, deeply moved. Then the man pulled out his phone and made a quiet call. "I need to find someone," he said. "Right now." Meanwhile, the boy reached home. His mother greeted him with a tired smile. She noticed his wet clothes and asked if he'd eaten. He shook his head but said he was okay. He didn't tell her what he had done. He never bragged about his small kindnesses. That night, he slept with an empty stomach, but a full heart. What he didn't know was that his simple act was about to change everything. The old man at the diner wasn't just anyone. He was the father of a well-known businessman. And he had seen something rare that night, not just kindness but sacrifice. Someone who had nothing still chose to give. And when someone like that gives without asking for anything in return, sometimes life finds a way to give back. The next morning, as the boy was folding laundry and sweeping the front steps of their small rented home, he heard a knock on the door. He wiped his hands, confused. They rarely had visitors. He opened the door and saw a black car parked outside. A tall man in a suit stood at the doorstep, holding an umbrella. His face was serious, but his eyes kind. "Are you the boy who was at the diner last night?" the man asked. The boy froze. How did this stranger know? "Yes," he said slowly, not sure what this was about. The man smiled. "I've been looking for you." The boy stood frozen at the door. His heart started beating faster. A well-dressed man was standing right in front of him, holding an umbrella in one hand and a business card in the other. Behind him, a black car waited quietly with a driver inside. "I'm sorry," the boy said nervously. "Did I do something wrong?" The man shook his head gently. "No, not at all. In fact, you did something very right." The boy looked confused. The man stepped forward slightly, his voice kind and calm. "My parents were at the diner last night. You paid for their meal." The boy blinked. He hadn't expected anyone to find out. He didn't do it to be noticed. I didn't want them to go hungry," he replied softly. The man smiled. "You didn't even have enough for yourself, did you?" The boy looked down and didn't answer. The man reached into his pocket and handed the card to the boy. "My name is Rafik. My parents told me everything. They were touched. I was even more touched when I heard the full story." The boy's mother came to the door, wiping her hands on her apron. She looked at the man with surprise. "Is everything all right?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," Rafik said respectfully. "Your son is the reason I'm here. He did something very kind. And I want to take you both out for lunch today. Please, my treat." The mother looked at her son. He nodded slowly. They didn't understand everything yet, but something about the man's voice felt trustworthy. Later that afternoon, a car pulled up to a fancy restaurant in the city. The boy and his mother stepped out, feeling shy and out of place. The boy wore his cleanest shirt. His mother had borrowed a scarf from their neighbor just to look decent. Inside, the restaurant was quiet and beautiful. Chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Waiters in white uniforms greeted them kindly. The boy sat across from Rafik, unsure of what to say. They ordered simple food. The boy still felt nervous, afraid he might drop something or say the wrong words. But Rafik spoke with warmth. He didn't treat them like poor people. He treated them like friends. "I want to know your story," Rafik said, placing his fork down. "You didn't even have enough money, but you helped my parents without hesitation. That says a lot about your heart." The boy looked at his mother. She gave a small nod, so the boy told him everything. About how his dad left them years ago. About how his mother worked 2 shifts to make ends meet. About how he studied hard and worked part-time at a gas station to help pay the bills. He shared how he wanted to finish school and maybe become something one day, maybe an engineer, or someone who builds things. But he didn't know if that dream would ever come true. Rafik listened quietly, not interrupting even once. His eyes were focused, his hands still. "You remind me of myself," Rafik said finally. "When I was young, we had nothing. I used to sell tea on the streets with my father. One day, a stranger helped me. I never forgot that kindness." The table went quiet for a moment. Then Rafik leaned forward. "I want to do something for you, for both of you." The boy and his mother looked at him, surprised. "I want to cover your school fees. Not just that, I want to support your full education. Books, uniform, everything. I'll also get your mother help so she doesn't have to work herself sick." The boy's eyes widened. "Why would you do that for us?" Rafik smiled gently. "Because the world needs more people like you. People who give without asking for anything back. And I believe in repaying kindness with kindness." The mother's eyes welled with tears. She covered her mouth with her hand. "Thank you," she whispered. We didn't expect this. We didn't ask for anything." "I know," Rafik said. "That's what makes it beautiful." After lunch, he asked for their address again and promised to send someone with supplies and school forms. He also told the boy he would personally help him find a mentor, someone in engineering, who could guide him along the way. The car dropped them home, but they were not the same people anymore. The boy still had the same clothes, same shoes, and same small house, but his heart was full of hope. For the first time in a long time, he saw a different future. That night, as he sat in his small room and looked at his textbooks, he couldn't stop smiling. He didn't help the old couple to get anything in return, but life had given something back anyway, something bigger than he ever imagined, and this was only the beginning. The next few days felt like a dream the boy didn't want to wake up from. The day after lunch with Rafiq, a small white car pulled up outside the boy's home. A kind woman stepped out, holding a folder and a big paper bag. She introduced herself as Rafiq's assistant and handed over the folder to the boy's mother. Inside were school registration forms, a scholarship letter, and a handwritten note from Rafiq that simply said, "This is your door. Walk through it." The bag had groceries, school supplies, and even new clothes. The mother stood there, stunned, holding the papers close to her chest. Her hands trembled, but her heart was full. The boy, too, was speechless. He touched the clean notebooks like they were treasure. His old ones were worn out and had pages missing. He held up the new school shirt. It still had the tag on it. For a moment, he just sat on the floor, staring at everything, unsure if he deserved it. But deep inside, a small voice whispered, "You do. You earned this with your heart." The following Monday, he stepped into a better school. His old uniform had been tight and faded. Now he wore a clean shirt, fitting pants, and polished shoes. Even though he felt nervous, the warm smile of the principal welcomed him in. The boy had always been smart, teachers knew that, but now, with the weight of worry off his shoulders, he began to shine. He raised his hand in class more often. He answered questions with confidence. He even started staying back after school to use the library, something he'd never had access to before. But he didn't forget where he came from. He still helped his mother at home. He still walked his younger sister to school. And every evening, he would open his old worn-out notebook and read the goals he had once written. Become someone. Help others. Be kind. One afternoon, while walking home, he noticed a beggar boy crying near a fruit stall. The child had lost the few coins he had. People passed him by, not even glancing in his direction. The teen paused, looked into his small wallet, and handed the boy the money he needed. It wasn't much, but it was everything to the child. The fruit seller watched silently. "You gave away your own money?" he asked. The boy simply replied, "Someone once helped me when I had nothing. I'm just passing it on." Word started to spread. Not because the boy told anyone, but because kindness has a way of shining on its own. The school principal heard the story. So did some local reporters. One day, without warning, a small article appeared in the newspaper. Teen's act of kindness opens doors he never expected. It showed a photo of him at school, smiling softly, holding a book. The title said it all. But what touched people most was the last line. He gave without asking. And life gave back when he needed it most. Rafiq called the boy that same evening. "Did you see the paper?" he asked with a chuckle. "Yes," the boy said shyly. "But I didn't tell anyone." "I know," Rafiq said. "That's why people need to hear your story. Not to make you famous, but to remind them that kindness still exists." Later that week, Rafiq arranged a surprise. He invited the boy, his mother, and his little sister to a gathering. It wasn't a party, it was something more meaningful. A small hall had been set up with chairs, lights, and soft music. On stage, Rafiq stood with a mic. He spoke to the small crowd, teachers, neighbors, friends. He pointed to the boy sitting in the front row. "This young man," he said, "changed my parents' lives with one quiet act. He didn't do it for reward. He didn't even know who they were. And that's why it mattered." People clapped softly. "Kindness doesn't need cameras," Rafiq continued. "It needs courage. This boy had that." The boy was called up on stage. He was nervous but held his head high. For the first time in his life, people were clapping for him. Not because of money, looks, or fame, but because of who he was inside. He didn't say much. Just a few honest words. "I didn't do anything big. I just helped someone. That's what my mom taught me. If you can help, you should." And in that moment, his words hit deeper than any long speech ever could. The days turned into weeks, and the boy's life slowly changed on the outside and the inside. Before, he used to walk with his head down, unsure of his place in the world. Now he stood taller not with pride, but with purpose. Every morning, he left for school with clean clothes, a packed lunch, and books that didn't have missing pages. But more than that, he left with hope. At school, his teachers began to notice something. He didn't just care about his own studies, he helped others too. If a classmate was struggling in math, he stayed behind to explain the topic. If someone forgot their lunch, he shared his own. Slowly, he became someone everyone respected, not because he was rich or famous, but because he was kind. One evening, his mother was cooking dinner when the boy came home carrying a bag. Inside were extra exercise books, pens, and a pair of used shoes. "Where did you get all this?" she asked. He smiled. A classmate's older brother was throwing them away. "I asked if I could take them. There's a boy in my old neighborhood who needs school supplies." His mother looked at him with quiet pride. "You always think of others," the boy shrugged. "Someone thought of me first." Rafik stayed in touch regularly. He didn't treat the boy like a charity case. He treated him like family. Sometimes they had tea together. Other times Rafik would introduce him to people, engineers, writers, community leaders, just so he could learn and grow. One day, Rafik surprised him again. He brought the boy to a large office building in the city. "This is where I started my company," Rafik said as they walked through the glass doors. "I want to show you something." They took the elevator up to the 5th floor. When the doors opened, the boy's eyes widened. A large room was filled with people working quietly at desks, computers humming softly. There were blueprints on the walls, sketches of machines, and design boards covered in colorful diagrams. "What is this?" the boy asked. "This," Rafik said proudly, "is where engineers build dreams." The boy stared in awe. One of the workers stood up and waved. "So this is the boy I've been hearing about," he said warmly. Rafik placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I've arranged for you to spend a few weekends here, just observing, learning, watching how things are built. Consider this your first step into the world of engineering." The boy couldn't believe it. He had read about machines, engines, and design. But now he could see them up close. He could ask questions. He could imagine his future. That night, he sat on the rooftop of his house, looking up at the stars. He remembered the night he walked into the diner, hungry and tired, and gave away the only money he had left. That one moment had changed everything. But what touched him most was not the money, the clothes, or even the school. It was the way people treated him now. Not with pity, but with belief. They believed in his heart, his future, his goodness. One afternoon, something unexpected happened. The old couple, the same ones he had helped in the diner, showed up at his home. The woman carried a box wrapped in brown paper. The man held her hand as they walked slowly toward the gate. The boy ran out to greet them. "You didn't have to come," he said softly. "But we wanted to," the woman replied, her eyes full of tears. "We've never forgotten what you did for us. It was such a small thing to you, but to us, it meant everything." She handed him the box. "This belonged to my husband when he was your age. He used to fix radios and machines. We thought maybe you could use it." The boy opened the box carefully. Inside were old tools, well kept clean, with handles smoothed by time. There was even a small screwdriver with the man's initials carved into it. He looked up, overwhelmed. "Are you sure?" the man smiled. "I've never been more sure of anything." That evening, he placed the toolbox on his study table. It wasn't shiny or new, but to him, it was priceless. It was a reminder, when you give from the heart, the world gives back in ways you never expect. Years passed, but the boy never forgot that one rainy night at the diner, that single moment when he gave his last bit of money to an old couple, had opened a door he didn't even know existed. A door to kindness, to opportunity, to change. Now, He stood tall, not as a boy, but as a young man. He had finished school with high marks. With Rafiq's continued support and his own hard work, he entered university to study mechanical engineering. It wasn't easy. There were long nights, difficult exams, and times he doubted himself. But every time he looked at the old toolbox on his desk, he remembered who he was and why he had started. He still lived with his mother and sister, in a better home now small but clean and warm. His mother no longer worked 2 jobs. She smiled more, slept more, and walked with pride. Rafiq remained in his life, not just as a mentor, but as a second father. He came to the boys' graduation, clapping the loudest when his name was called. After graduation, the young man got a job at a respected engineering firm. It wasn't flashy or high-paying, but it was honest work. He designed small machines and tools for schools and rural clinics, things that made life easier for those who needed it most. But he hadn't forgotten the people still walking the hard road he once walked. One weekend, he returned to his old neighborhood. The streets were still cracked, the houses still small, but the memories were strong. He passed the diner. It had a new sign now, but the same warm smell of food. As he walked by, he saw a young boy sitting on the steps outside, looking sad, holding a torn school bag. The man stopped and sat beside him. "Everything okay?" he asked gently. The boy nodded slowly but didn't speak. The man smiled. "I used to sit right there, just like you. You know what helped me?" The boy looked up with tired eyes. "What?" "Kindness," he said. "Someone believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself." He opened his wallet and handed the boy a small card. On it was a name and a phone number. "Call this tomorrow. They'll help you with books and school fees." "Why?" the boy asked. "You don't even know me." The man smiled wider now. "Because I was you once, and someone helped me first." That night, as he walked home under the stars, he thought about how far he'd come. Not in terms of money or success, but in heart. He had learned that you don't need to be rich to make someone's life better. You just need to care. A few days later, he visited the elderly couple again. They were older now, slower, but their faces lit up the moment they saw him. "You always come back," the old man said with a chuckle. "Always," the young man replied. They had tea together like family. The woman had baked a small cake. On it were the words, "Thank you forever." He helped them with house repairs, fixed a broken chair, and even taught the old man's neighbor how to repair a radio using the tools from the gifted box. Before leaving, the couple hugged him tightly. "You were once a boy with nothing," the woman whispered, "but you gave us everything." As he walked out of their home, he felt something deep inside him, not pride, not success. Peace. His story had gone viral years ago. People still recognized him sometimes. Some even called him the kind-hearted boy from the diner. But to him, none of that mattered. What mattered was that he had stayed true to who he was. He had loved, he had helped, and now he was giving others the same chance that had once saved him. That small act of kindness, a meal for 2 strangers, had grown into something so big. It couldn't be measured. Not in money, not in fame, but in lives touched, hearts changed, and hope passed forward. Because sometimes the biggest doors open from the smallest acts, and sometimes the richest hearts come from the humblest homes.